This episode was unexpected. A few days after recording the most recent episode with Micah and Michelle Agnew, entitled The Support Raisers Part 1, I visited my friend Dan in San Diego. Now, I knew his parents had been support raising for their whole career, but it wasn't until I heard Dan's father, Daryl, say something about how loyal their supporters had been that the light bulb went on. What if I could grab some tips on building and maintaining a financial support team for the Agnews? Even better, what if I could intentionally pair this conversation with the last one? The Agnews and the Nusses are on a very similar journey, but separated by 53 years. What an interesting and beautiful contrast. Now, you don't need to have listened to the last episode to appreciate this one, but you might find a deeper appreciation of each if you listen to both. Finally, before we jump in, I just want to say, Daryl and Donna, thank you for welcoming me into your home and for being so generous with your story. What a blessing. Okay, here's that conversation.
Well, so I have a friend. He's in full-time support raising mode, and he expects us to be kind of the calling for the rest of his life, or definitely something close to his heart. But what was interesting is you're on a different side of that than he is, and so just to get a few thoughts on how do you build a support team, and then how do you keep them engaged? You mentioned that they're very loyal. That was a phrase I heard you say. So how do you kind of nurture that over the course of So first, for instance, like how long have you had this team?
Okay. Did he have some training before he went and started to raise support?
He does, yeah. So Standing Stone, it does some really good training, and they do have some good support systems in place. And I heard you talk about, thinking of them as a ministry team, not just people who give money.
Yeah.
And they do use that language for him to kind of, that he's not supposed to just send out support letters. He's supposed to have conversations with people.
Right, absolutely.
But yeah.
There's a real good book called The God Ask, and maybe they use that.
They read that.
Uh-huh.
They read that book.
Yeah, that's a real good book. That's that's kind of a foundational book.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you ask, for me, I started to work on my support team right out of college when I first came on the staff of Campus Crusade for Christ.
What year was that?
Which was 1971.
Okay.
So that's 53 years ago.
Okay.
And I was thinking about that this morning. I still have 4, maybe it's 5 people who initially agreed to be on my support team who are still on my support team.
Wow.
And of those 4, I didn't know any of them at the time. I mean, they were each one of them were referrals.
Okay.
Like somebody said, you ought to talk to so-and-so about what you do, and they're really dear family. I jotted down 3 things, and maybe I'll just segue first of all. It's so easy to think that fundraising is a necessary evil in order for me to have a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And my observation is that I would say the majority of full-time workers who raise their support feel that way. It's a necessary evil that I have to endure in order for me to have a ministry. And I was probably 15 years into ministry, maybe 10, doesn't matter, before all of a sudden it dawned on me, no, these people are my ministry. They're just as much a part of my ministry as the kids I work with or whoever. They're just they're a part of my ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So consequently, and I guess I'd say it's one thing to say, it's another thing to live it out. But I have typically told my staff that you need to consider allowing 20% of your time to go towards raising and cultivating your financial partners.
Even after you've
done
launched, because you've got to the percentage that you want. Even after that, on an ongoing basis, you want to spend about 20%.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, do I spend that much? It ebbs and flows with me. But I jotted down 3 things.
Yeah.
One is the power of a thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Learning how to say thank you. And Don and I, we get, requests or whatever. And so many times, we respond. And it surprises us the number of times we never hear back from somebody.
And when you say requests, what is that?
Oh, a fundraising request.
Oh,
We're
so
going to go on a short-term mission trip.
Okay.
Or we're wanting to raise support because we're going into ministry or whatever. And there's numerous times we never hear back.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know we see the check went through. So obviously you got the check, but we never hear back.
Mm-hmm.
So consequently, we're not quick to help again because we have no indication that was really needed or appreciated or whatever. So that I would say that's probably my number one thing is learning how to say thank you. And I've got a personal policy that when anybody ever gives me their first contribution, whether it's $10 or $1,000, I immediately get on the phone and say thank you. I call them.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's a gift, let's say over $500, what I would consider a larger gift, if it's a one-time or a special gift, I will get on the phone and thank them. And one of the reasons if it's a first-time person is, one, I want them to know clearly that I appreciated it, but also we've had a number of people that are younger that it's probably the first time they ever supported anybody.
Yeah.
Okay, I want that to be a good enough experience so the next person who comes to ask them for support, they'll have had a good enough experience that they'll say, yeah, this is a great experience. We want to be more involved.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you have a bad experience the first time you invest in somebody's ministry, you're less likely. So I feel like as far as the whole God's kingdom and the Great Commission is concerned, part of my responsibility is to express appreciation. So I do that. I mean, I've got it on my phone right now. We had a couple that go to our church, and they sent in $300 a couple weeks ago. So I hand wrote a note, and today she had heard that I was going to have surgery. She sent me a text where she's got that card up on her desk as a reminder to pray for me. And she sent me the text of the card.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do you keep track of that in some kind of a log, or do you just kind of, as long as you get the first time in, then you don't have to,
That's a good question. I think it depends upon personality. Some people need to keep track. I could do a better job of keeping track. I do have, then the other thing, this will go into the second thing, communication. So the second, that's thank you.
Yeah.
So can you over thank you? Maybe, but not likely.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is communication. I feel like it's really important that you have regular communication. For Don and I, we're old school, and most of our financial partners are old school. We still send out by snail mail a regular newsletter, and it's got a certain brand to it. It's News from the Nusses, and that goes out 11 minimum of 10 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll make that a priority. And I want it to be easily readable. Sometimes people send out newsletters and it must be in 8 font. So small you can't read it.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's got a myriad of stories, which you lose to. We were talking about this, about how you do emails. Well, I put it in 14 font. I got pictures. I got headings. I want to be able to read it in 3 minutes.
What do you what do you prioritize communicating in your communication piece?
Stories about how their investment in us has made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So we tend to give it a theme. We typically have a theme. We've gone down now to typically it's one page, but this one we're going to get out as soon as I pass my surgery. Is going to be a 2-pager. So we do 3 or 4 that are 2-pagers a year, and then 1 page. But it's got pictures. It's got a theme. It's got typically a story, and then we express our appreciation. So. We've done that. I mean, I've done that regularly. And I think Crew has done research, and there's no question that people who do 10 or more newsletters a year have better support than those who don't as communication. Then in addition to that, I have a list, and I haven't done this now for a couple months because of kind of my health issues here. But I will take a Saturday morning, and we have now supporters that are our ministry partners that are across the country, but I always start at 6 o'clock, which is 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and work my way across and talk to, 4, 5, 6 people on a Saturday morning. How you doing? Never bring up money.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing? What's up? I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you. And so, and then we've got some people at our church that are ministry partners, and I acknowledge it. I mean, I say, thanks again for being on our support team. We really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't do that every time, but I don't necessarily hide it.
Mm-hmm.
But communication, I think people want to know, what are you doing? How's it making a difference? And that regular communication, I think, is just really important. And people who don't do it, if you're weak in these 2 areas, then when you do need to raise new support, it makes it more difficult because you don't feel comfortable like you've really been in communication. Or the person that you're maybe asking for increased support or referrals, in their heart they're thinking, I'm not sure I want to pass this person along.
Mm-hmm.
Where if indeed you're communicating with them and that kind of thing, it's like, no, I don't mind my friend being connected to this person. It'll be a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my, I don't, you can take this with a grain of salt, but I used to say, as people got older, and they'd retire and they'd have to maybe eliminate, I'd sometimes tell Donna, I want to be the last person that this person can't support anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And ironically, a person passed away, and their son or daughter sent me a note and said, we are so sorry that, we're not going to be able to continue to support. Either is not going to be able to continue, but we just want you to know you were the last person
That's wonderful.
that she supported. Or her last wishes were that we would send you this one-time gift or whatever it was, So, and then the other thing, I'm just rambling now, but it comes from the heart. I mean, there's certain best practices, but God still is the one who provides. And many times the people you think are going to support don't, and many times those people that you never think were going to invest or give do. So it's still, the Lord is one who provides, but there are best practices. And the third thing I jotted down was have a mindset of ministry or serving them. And so, I mean, it's possible to see your ministry partners as kind of like vending machines. It's like, okay, once a month, ka-ching, here comes the Well, they're not. They're ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And they're people that can be invested in the Great Commission or, have discipling needs, growth needs. And so Don and I, in a vague sense, and we've cut back now, but at one point we were sending out 350 newsletters a month.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if a pastor had 350 giving units in his church, that would be a pretty good sized church,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, of that 350, probably only 150 or maybe 170 were giving units that ever gave even once during the course of a year. So the others were people that we were cultivating or people that were friends or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, what can we do to encourage those people? So sometimes when I find a good book, I'll send a good book or to them
Mm-hmm.
end of the year, or if somebody's struggling with an area and I find an article or something, I'll send it to them. Or if there's somebody that has an interest in ministry or whatever, and I all of a sudden find somebody that is involved in that ministry, I'll say, hey, you need to go see that person or whatever. So it's really being involved in ministry and finding out what their interests are and what their needs are. And probably the most bizarre thing, and I probably shouldn't even bring this up, but one of my larger ministry partners collected beer bottles.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was traveling internationally, I'd be in Russia or Costa Rica or India or whatever, I would quietly see if I could find a unique beer bottle,
Nice.
wash it out, and bring it back. So here I am,
Yeah.
Then I'd come back and I'd say, Jeff, here, I got another beer bottle for you.
Yeah.
And finally, not just because of me, but in general, his collection got big enough, his wife shut it down. She said, this is crazy. But, it was a fun way that I could, be involved in something that I knew he was interested in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, so again, that's just being involved in people's lives. And so to do those things, that's why I say, it's okay to allocate 1 day a week, because or 20% of your time is to even be praying, thinking about, doing the communication, writing the note. That all takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty tough to do it on the backstroke sometimes. And sometimes that's what we have to do. But if we're not intentional, then it doesn't happen and we tend to suffer. So those are kind of, I guess, the three things that I jotted down that I think are probably pillars of maintaining our support team. And sometimes you're going to lose people, this past year, our largest ministry partner, they typically he's a vice president of a huge company, and they typically give us, some tithe off their bonus or whatever. And he's getting close to retirement, but he didn't say anything this year, and we've not heard from him or whatever. So we don't know what the status they are. So I'm going to let time go a little bit longer, and then I'm going to really make an attempt to find out.
Yeah.
And from a personal basis,
Yeah.
how are you guys doing?
Yeah.
We haven't heard from you for 6, 7, 8, 9 months.
Mm-hmm. And you hope that the relationship that you've cultivated, they know that, and one of the reasons that when you call, you're not just trying to shake the tree for the money.
Right.
You're not, hey,
And
I didn't get the money.
Now, so it's not, I've quit raising new support.
Yeah.
But in this couple's case, it's a classic case. We met him, and he was a fighter pilot out of here with Top Gun.
Mm-hmm.
So this is clear back in the late 80s. And they were just a couple, and we invited them over for lunch because they were a new couple in town, and he was in the Navy and appreciated it. And then Eventually, they got relocated. And so we said, well, can we stay in touch? Can we send you our newsletter? Oh, yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I think they started at $25 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kept in touch. And then when we went back to Promise Keepers, we took Dave and Dan back there, and this would have been in the late 90s. And we stayed with them for Promise Keepers. And so by that time they'd had kids. And then one of their son really got into some bad company and got in drugs a little bit, got sideways. And so the wife, it just broke their heart. Well, I heard about it and called them. And I think I was the one person that was in contact with them and said, well, how are you doing? And they would call and give us updates. Up until this year, they've been giving probably about $15,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
So that grew, and it wasn't that when they were just a young couple that we thought, wow, these are going to be large donors someday. They were a couple that, but we did let them know that we were in ministry and would they want our newsletter and cultivate the relationship.
How do you call someone and you're kind of curious if they're going to remain part of your financial team? We also don't want the money to be the point of the conversation, but it is also part of the conversation.
I guess I probably was, because we are really close to retirement ourselves, I would say now, it would be a little bit, let's say I was 15 years younger. I would call and say, I'm calling to, we haven't heard from you for some time, and we're really interested in how you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no pressure financially. And as I've thought of it, if I didn't call you, it'd almost be that we didn't ever appreciate all the funds you've given to us in the past.
Sure.
So I want you to know we've appreciated that. And, but there's this call is not to ask you for more money.
Yeah.
This is just to see how you're doing.
Yeah.
And typically then that opens a door if I'll say, oh my gosh, you didn't get our contribution this year?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, or say, well, you know what, we're just not able to do it this year, or we're going to go a little bit different direction or whatever. They typically, that opens the door. I don't need that. I've not been one that's felt comfortable asking for the big money, like sometimes you're trained to do in certain trainings.
Do you ask for an amount when you bring on someone new, or you kind of say, "Hey"?
I usually give a range.
Yeah.
I would say, many of our financial partners give. I usually probably start at 50 or 40, or say 50, 100, or $200 a month, typically. But there's no pressure in terms of what you give.
Mm-hmm.
So I typically give a range.
And then, do you and Donna? I mean, is this kind of more your department, or are you both?
That's really a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know what your friend's status is, but when we came on staff with Campus Crusade at the time, you came on as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And in our situation, we came on as singles. So I raised my support as a single person. Donna had her support team. Mine from Kansas, hers from Boise. And then, so when we got married, we kind of combined, and we've always done ministry together. So I take the lion's share of the responsibility, but like we do a push at the end of the year, and Donna does the lion's share of the thank you notes at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like our newsletter, we've got a newsletter service now that they do the envelopes and they stuff the envelopes, but we still put the stamps on them.
Mm-hmm.
So Donna still does that. So it's a united effort, but I take the responsibility. I feel like it's my responsibility to provide.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that's helpful a little bit.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
So anyway, just to recap, say thank you. maintain good communication, and then look for ways to minister to your financial partners.
I wonder if you'd be, I'd almost love to put this as because I actually had Micah and Michelle, that's their names. I had them over and recorded a podcast with them of them talking about being a family in the midst of full-time support raising.
Wow.
Because you always kind of hear about it from afterwards. But hey, what's it like as a family right now where you're not getting a regular check? Family of 8, So what would be kind of fun, with your permission, you can think about this, but I'd almost love to include this conversation as kind of a partner episode.
Oh, of course. Well, that's, things today, we've got staff that start from zero and raise $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month, right? They got families and stuff like that, but I can't even imagine it. Don and I have kind of grown. When we first came on staff, I raised, I think it was right around $450. I think our goal was $450 a month. Now, this was in 1971, okay? But we also were expected to raise that in about 4 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That was just kind of expected. And both Don and I did, because we went back, but so we got after it, but it's not like raising thousands of dollars a day. Now, all those years, the price of gas then was a quarter, and like it got up to like 40 cents a gallon, probably. So, prices of everything have gone up tenfold. So it would be tenfold, as well. But still, we were expected to raise that in about 4 weeks. Well, our goal, what we encourage our staff is to try to still raise their support in 100 days, which we've had one couple do that, but they're phenomenal. He's just so relational, and I think he never had to go to referrals. He had so many kids that he administered to as a youth pastor and families, and
yeah, this family, they're just, I think they're at 70%, or just about at 70%, and they had kind of heard that, once you kind of get past 50%, it starts to get kind of slower, because now you're just on referrals. So you've kind of gone through all the people that you know by name. Now you're starting to get into folks who don't know you so well. So they were hoping to start in September. So they're kind of trying to feel out. They also get to set their budget too. So there's always that they could bring their budget down so that so maybe 70% turns into 95%.
Okay, here's the, what should I say? The dilemma was when you reach 70 or 80%. Let's say 70%. You can live on 70%.
Yeah.
You can. You can. So you can survive on it, or probably, or you can get by. And so the temptation is, we can get by on 70%. Okay, what are you not doing by not taking your 70%? You're probably not saving. You're probably not putting towards retirement. You're not putting towards your kids' college, or whatever saving would be, right? You may be cutting corners with your maintenance, or you may be cutting corners with your own relationship, or whatever that other 30% would entail, or the quality of your ministry, or being able to, whatever is in that other 30%. So, like with Crew, one of the good things about Crew is, once you set it, they've got coaches and stuff. You're expected to get to 100%. And it can be really hard, and And some people never do, and then they eventually then, don't come on staff. But so that's my only thought would be is that as hard as it is, keep pushing forward so that you've got that. So you're at what you felt when you began was 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you may have put some things in that really you might say, well, you know what, we were probably a little bit idealistic but then you're going to have people who, have to cease being on your support team or whatever. The other thing I guess I could have added is that one of the advantages of the newsletter list for us is, let's say that you and Gabby, we got to be just casual friends or whatever, and you showed some interest in our ministry. I might say, you seem to have some interest in what we're doing. Would you mind if I put you on our newsletter list?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would typically say, and once a year, we do ask for funding for the coming year.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind being on the newsletter list?
Mm-hmm.
Or the other thing that I do at the end of the year, if somebody is the first time I've asked for an end of the year gift, I don't send them a request without their permission. I'll call them and say, hey, I'm working on a newsletter right now, and it is part of where we're asking for additional funding. Do you mind if I send that letter to you? There's no pressure, but I'm not going to send it to you without your permission.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to come across as a bait and switch type of thing. But I always try to, like when we used to be sending out 350, I'd try to ideally add 30 to 50 new names a year. And then there would be some that it was very obvious that they weren't probably going to respond or they hadn't responded. Then I might not send them a letter, or those would be people I might ask and say, do you still want to get her a letter or whatever?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I ideally then whenever I needed to raise new support, I was able to go into a pool of people that were familiar with what we were doing, had already been getting regular communication, which is a lot easier to ask, and many times those people just begin, they just start supporting. So anyway, yeah, so if they've got 70%, good for them, really good for them. But the last 30 is the hardest for a number of reasons, because typically you're dealing with referrals. And then there's also the fatigue of just persevering, and then the temptation to say, well, we could really get by with what we've got coming in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But long term, if they're wanting to do this long term, that's not the healthy way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. I didn't used to feel this way, but probably 20 years ago, I came to the point that I thought, if somebody came along and offered me a job at a church or with an organization and said, you don't have to raise support anymore, you can have your job, this job, I probably would have turned it down. Because there's just something about having a group of people that, are praying for you or care for you. And even right now, as we're thinking about retirement, one of the hardest things is, and we still have on a monthly basis, what is it? I think it's right around 70 people that give on a monthly basis, 60 to 70, something like that, that's a team, right? What does that look like to cut, just all of a sudden not have those people that we're in touch with, right? But then it's allowed us freedom, particularly now, to continue to work for the network and do this and do that, where we've got this long-standing support team, so now it's become a real asset to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose when you retire, you kind of cut the team loose financially. Is that?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Does Crew give you any?
we're with
Like
we're with the national network now,
Okay. You transition over to the national network of
youth ministry.
youth ministries. So what do you do you then try to
Well, what we're
help these folks find other ministries to connect
So
to?
that's one of the things that we're working on with the network is that we would give these people an opportunity to continue to give to the network.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the network CEO would like us to do, and then we may give some other options as well. But how many would continue with the network, I'm not sure, because there may not be the relational connection. But most people have other people or things they'd give to.
Yeah,
right.
That'll be an interesting journey there. Is to kind of when that time comes.
And one of the couples that was one of the first couples, they're now in their 90s, 53 years ago, and in January they finally dropped us a note, said we're not going to support you going forward. It was like $25 a month, but we totally understood. My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So we we have a little bit of that attrition, or people pass away now that are older. It's interesting. We've got one woman who's went through a divorce, and the person she's remarried or married to, but this would be years ago. She was in our ministry in Riverside as a teenager. And at that time, I would have been mid to late 20s. And so here she is, a teenager. I mean, she was 14, 15, maybe 16 years old. But anyway, she shared that and I didn't know it at the time. Maybe the woman that was working with her did. But her parents were going through a divorce. And her dad basically abandoned the family. So she said, you never knew it, but for the years that I was involved in the high school ministry there, you were my father figure. You were the man I looked up to as a father figure. And she said, I've never forgotten that. And she said, because we were talking about retirement and stuff, and she said, you could retire, and I still wouldn't end my support because I'm so grateful for your being there, clear back, that I would just continue to support.
Yeah.
So you have a handful of people like that.
That's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And to get to hear that and have that connection.
Yeah.
I can see why you wouldn't want to just take a job where you suddenly don't need to have that relational connection to your support is no longer there. Like it's very meaningful to you.
But when the Dan was just a little tyke. I mean, he was probably, when we moved down here, so he would have been just born. So the economy was bad. Moving from San Bernardino here was a increase in cost of living. And there was a couple year period there that our support was really thin. We lived paycheck to paycheck. I mean, it just, when many people do, and God provides. But it was a particularly challenging time. Okay, I don't enjoy those times, but God was faithful, but our support was short. We needed to raise new support. Then over the years, that happened. Moving to Moscow or moving to Russia was probably the best thing I ever had to do our support, because all of a sudden we became a real missionary. And people really got behind us when we went to Russia. And so then that group of people, when we came back, I just did everything I could to maintain that group of people, which we did. We lost, and even transitioning from Campus Crusade to the network, we lost very few people.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so it's as it's turned out to be a blessing, but it's a pressure, but you know what? Losing your job, like it happens to friends that we all know, and that's a common occurrence too, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Or somebody who owns a business and you're just trusting you're going to have customers, that's pressure. Or the company that you're working for, you're trusting that company's going to be, that can be pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So we all feel some level of, quote, pressure when it comes to providing for ourselves and our family.
Mm-hmm.
And so then ultimately it comes down, God is the source, no matter what it's like. So, but I'm glad that they're having a long vision for the long haul, So.
Well, thanks for reflecting on these things.
Yeah, I probably know it's quarter 3. I was going to go for a walk, so.
All right, well,
then I'm going to come back and lay out my newsletter before I hang it up for the day. Well, hopefully that's helpful.